Good afternoon and welcome to today's online symposium, or more appropriately called Zoomposium, in celebration, of course, of none other than International Women's Day. Today is the culmination of a month-long festivity of almost 100% online activities as we all cope with the challenges of the pandemic. Now, this crisis may have highlighted the centrality of women's contributions, but has also created a disproportionate impact on women, such as increased and overwhelming unpaid care work, to being trapped with their abusers at home with no access to quality protection services, to contending with a shrinking space for participation in the political and decision-making arena, and in the increasing economic gaps between those with wealth and disadvantaged groups, among others. Thus, more than ever, we need to amplify women's rights to decision-making in all areas of life. Equal pay, equal sharing of unpaid care and domestic work, and an end to all forms of gender-based violence, and services responsive to women's and girls' differentiated and intersecting needs. Now, we hope that today's Zoomposium will allow us to leverage our individual and collective capacities as we deal with a post-COVID-19 world. Now, let us begin today's program by greeting one another. A happy International Women's Day. Hello, everyone, to all my ladies out there, my super women, my inspiration, my heroes. Thank you so much for being with us, and happy International Women's Day. Happy Women's Month. We Filipinos will always find a reason to be cheerful. Now, this plus women's compassion and leadership are key elements for women shining through the pandemic with her brand and class. Today's symposium will also guide us as we navigate the future. And with that, we also would happily like to share that you can send in your questions to any of our speakers today. Just share that in the Q&A section or in the chat box, and we would be happy to relay that later on in our panel discussion. Please include your name, your question, the person you would like to direct the question to, and of course, what you would like to ask. And to formally welcome everyone, let us call on the country director of Oxfam Philippines, Miss Locke.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's always a joy to see you and to be with you. Thank you so much for being with us again this year as you were with us last year in what we did not realize at that time, but was our last physical event, the celebration of Women's Day last year. In Oxfam, we are fully committed to putting gender at the core of what we do. As part of this commitment, we are once again celebrating International Women's Day. This year, we focus on women's leadership in the time of a global pandemic, aligning with the IWD 2021 global theme of Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. In the Philippines, we adopted our theme from last year, We Make Her Story, as an affirmation of our firm belief in how women from all sectors are making significant contributions towards an equal and just world. We celebrate International Women's Day this year against a background of COVID-19. Our celebration today, in fact, is only 3 days away from the first anniversary of COVID-19 being declared a pandemic. The long lockdown that followed disrupted lives and livelihoods and spotlighted and deepened inequalities that had existed before the pandemic, including social and systemic barriers to women's participation and leadership. The pandemic also intensified gender issues such as gender-based violence and unpaid care work, and the poor working conditions of frontliners, majority of whom are women. Despite this, we celebrate IWD today with much hope as women continue to make magnificent contributions to address the challenges of the pandemic as compassionate and inclusive women leaders, frontliners, scientists, farmers, community organizers, humanitarian workers, and so on. Looking beyond the uncertainties and foreboding caused by COVID, we reached out to women's organizations, women leaders, and individuals on various initiatives over the last few weeks so that together we march virtually to a post COVID-19 world that promotes and supports women's contributions, leadership, innovation, and individual and collective capacities. Since February 8, we have conducted various activities, capacity building, learning, dialogue, in celebration of International Women's Day and National Women's Month, in partnership with, among others, UN Women, the Philippine Commission on Women, and Rappler and Move PH. The pandemic may have slowed us down or sidetracked some of our resources, capacities, and even hope. But 1 year on, we continue to see women and girls around the world and in the Philippines taking on leadership roles, not just to address the challenges of the crisis, but to continuously and tirelessly shape an equal and inclusive future. Across the Philippines, across different sectors and professions and industries, we heard and celebrated women's stories of triumph, leadership, and compassion. Truly, one woman's story can be another's prayer. In this campaign, we saw women connecting to one another, lifting each other up with their inspiring stories of strength amidst the many barriers they faced. This is a hopeful view that women and girls in all our diversity and intersecting needs and capacities can come together and celebrate our skills, our knowledge, potential, and networks to effectively lead in COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. So let us continue to create spaces and provide women the platform so we can share our wisdom and passion towards empowerment of more women and girls. Let us keep the conversations on women's leadership towards achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world flowing beyond today. Let us commit to continuously engage our partners and the public in responding to the impacts of the pandemic. It is thus our vision to establish with you, our partners, a knowledge and learning hub on gender justice in the time of and during recovery from COVID-19. There is no respite because at stake is an equal future, a better normal where women empowerment is no longer just a premise but a reality. Happy International Women's Day, happy National Women's Month, and I hope you all enjoyed this symposium this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony.
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Lot Felisco, Country Director of Oxfam Philippines. And yes po, you know, we've come such a long way. It truly is quite emotional because one of the last events that I had done publicly last year was International Women's Day with Oxfam Philippines. And here we are together again in a different way, shape, and form, but we are together, and that's what is important. Now, mga kaibigan, let us welcome our first keynote speaker this afternoon to empower us and inspire us. And of course, this topic is focused on women innovating and empowering others. Ms. Cherrie Atilano is the founder and CEO of Agria Agricultural Systems International Incorporated, a for-purpose and inclusive business that is creating the first replicable one-island economy that is zero hunger, zero waste, and zero insufficiency. Cherrie started teaching farmers at the age of 12 and has 22 years of vast experience in sustainable food systems. She is a high-level ambassador of UN Scaling Up Nutrition, Food Systems Champion of the United Nations, Young Global Leader of the World Economic Forum, board member of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and the Philippine Ambassador of Food Security. In 2020, with her leadership in COVID-19 response for connecting farmers to consumers, she was named the best top manager in post-pandemic economy of the APEC Best Award and UN Women WEP's Award for COVID-19 response. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our superwoman, Miss Cherrie Atilano.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much, Oxfam, Miss Lot, and thank you very much, Nomel, for this invitation. I'm actually coming here from Fort Santiago because it's like a back-to-back event for the International Women. And happy International Women's Day, everyone. It's such a pleasure to always, share this passion. Me being a believer that women are always a great force. They occupy half of the world, and they need to, and that is a power, to actually lift the world. I actually have a presentation. If I can request the organizer to share my presentation. So I was designing my talk, and I said, I will discuss about women empowering women through agripreneurship. I come from a male-dominated industry, that's agriculture. So as mentioned by Tony a while ago, I was actually teaching farmers at the age of 12, and it's such a battle to climb. And growing up, at 15, I was always attending conferences that where I was waiting at the parking lot looking for an old man to allow me to enter a conference because I'm a young woman. I was 15 years old. I had no business and I was no one. So I would always ask for this old person to tell the registration to allow me to enter and treat me as his granddaughter. So he would always like tell the organizer, oh, she is my granddaughter. I need her to enter the conference because she will remind me to take my medicine. But that's not the truth. I was just begging to attend a conference because there was no support system yet at that time. So if you can share the next slide, please. So I'm a proponent of women in agriculture, in the Philippines. And this is actually my company. I started this in 2014. Among all the businesses I've been into, I've been doing landscape design also. Like for example, if you go to Bonifacio Global City and Greenbelt, those were part of my projects in really greening the city. But more than that, my heart belongs to the farmers. I started this company. It's called AGREA. It's actually an innovative, inclusive, for-purpose agribusiness that is founded on sustainable agriculture, fair trade, and replicable model of an agri-based economy. You say, why AGREA? AGREA is actually a very woman-driven, a business, agriculture, and Gaia, the Greek word for Mother Earth, which is environment. So in our business, we are not into cultivation of land alone or cultivation of crops. We're really into cultivation of human beings. I guess that's the problem in Philippine agriculture. We forgot to take care of our food producers. So it's a crime against humanity that the food producers, the farmers, and the fisher folks are always the hungry and the poorest. So in our business, we try to provide them ecology of dignity. I will be discussing it further. Agri-based economy. So we work on island base in the Philippines because we have 7,107 islands, and most of these islands are underdeveloped, especially in agriculture, but they have so much resources if we're given a chance to be developed. And lastly, we're a strong believer of fair trade. So we work with farmers in a fairest trade possible. Next slide, please. I was about I was about to inspire a lot of you in terms of agriculture, right? But a lot of people would always say, "Oh, agriculture, it's a one-way ticket to poverty and drudgery." Even the children of farmers are not interested to go into agriculture because it's hard. You always need to be under the heat of the sun, and when there's typhoon in the Philippines, nothing will really happen into your crops. But I'm here, I think, to convince you, but that during this pandemic, only agriculture is the most surviving and thriving sector. I think when the pandemic was announced the closure was announced last March 12, no one went to the supermarket to buy new clothes, to buy new cars, to buy whatever. Everyone were in panic to buy food. And this is actually what strengthened our vision. So our vision is to create the first one island economy in the Philippines. And this is actually, we're working in the island of Marinduque and Siargao, and 8 more islands in the pipeline. But what we're trying to do is to really elevate the lives of our farmers and fisher folks. And most of these lives are the lives of women, in those areas. And we're a strong believer that in our operation, because we believe and take care of Mother Earth, Gaia, it needs to be zero waste in all our operation. We practice regenerative agriculture, organic agriculture, and natural farming. Zero hunger, this is not about the hunger of the stomach. This is about the hunger of human being to belong, the hunger of human being to be dignified and be respected. And lastly is zero insufficiency. This is about building an economy based in agriculture in every rural islands in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to say here as an example, this is actually a pressing problem in the Philippines right now. Our farmers are endangered species, right? Filipino farmers are poor, aging with low educational attainment. So this proverb says, when the farmer is poor, so is the whole country. This is real. That's why Philippines is poor, because we never really taken care of our farmers. And right now our farmers are in 57 years old to 60 years old average age, and not a lot of young people are interested in farming, and not a lot of women in the rural sector are interested into farming. So it's such a huge challenge. I think this IWD today hashtag choose to challenge, I've been challenging everyone to really go back to what sustains us, that's food production. Next slide, please. So in my next slide, you will actually see just sample of our operations in Marinduque Island and in Siargao Island. You would always say, why these 2 islands, right? Marinduque is such a model because we work closely with the local governments in Marinduque, and we work with a lot of farmers in the island. And Siargao, we pilot in Siargao because it's like an example of those islands where tourists are swamping. Before the pandemic, this island was receiving around 400,000 tourists a year, and it's actually depleting the resources in terms of food. So 95% of food in the island of Siargao is actually imported. And this is an example, to all countries. Like yesterday, I was just in Boracay, and Boracay, all the food in Boracay are mostly imported. And this should not be done. We have so much resources in our land. We have 12 million of underproductive land in the Philippines. And if we revisit of that, we revisit our countryside, it's such a beautiful work. Siargao is so important to me because in 2018, we launched the More Love for Women Farmers in Siargao, where 800 women farmers signed up to do this. And we're making it happen. Right now, we just opened a farm school in Siargao. And this year, we're actually training more than 500 women farmers with a scholarship to take organic agriculture and to do value addition. Next slide, please. And during this pandemic, it's pretty eminent on how, a lot of women in the agriculture sector, actually they're trailblazing on how to contribute to the sector. I will show you a little bit of video. This is only around 1 minute and 20 seconds. The World Economic Forum captured their work, and I'll show you a bit. Thank you very much for sharing that beautiful video done with the World Economic Forum for work. And actually, I will give you an update because when that video was made, it was around May of 2020. And my next slide will give you a bit of update on where we are right now. I know that during the pandemic, everyone's like having a hard time, right? How to survive, where to get their food. The farmers they're losing actually their market. There were no restaurants or hotels to deliver their goods. Some traders were not out because they're afraid to go out. And 3 days after the lockdown was declared, I received a message from a pineapple farmer whom I will visit again tomorrow. He sent me a message. Miss Cherrie, I know you were a speaker in one of the, farmers training before, and I'm here because we really need Agria's help. I have 15,000 pineapples. I have nowhere to sell. I borrowed money from a bank, and I need this money to pay the graduation of my daughter. My daughter is the first to graduate in university in the entire clan. So hearing that story, we started the Move Food initiative out of empathy and compassion. I think during the pandemic, these two words are so powerful that it really, help a lot of us to survive. So we launched the Move Food initiative to respond in the pandemic. And next slide, please. I'm so happy that this is now a result. We actually have been helping more than 28,000 farmers delivering goods to different online platforms, different subdivisions and condplexes. We supply food to 10 hospitals in the Philippines. And from that, we actually almost right now, almost 200 metric tons. I couldn't even comprehend what 200 metric tons is. We were the first to ship from roll on, roll off, from Jensan Port to Manila Port, and first to negotiate in Cebu Pacific just to fly a lot of produce in Mindanao and other places in the Philippines because they are rotting in farmers' field. And since we're so strong in zero waste, which is actually a key in our work, we also launched the Agria Rescue Kitchen. Next slide, please. And this Agri Rescue Kitchen is actually run by our women in the farming communities and also in some urban poor communities, and those women who lost their jobs in restaurants during the pandemic. So we created a lot of projects from jams to sauces, and we even partner with my good friend Margarita Forres, a very famous chef, to make sauces for Chibo just to save those tons and tons of tomatoes rotting in farmers' fields or being thrown along the road because there's nowhere to sell. And this initiative is a first Filipino initiative, and I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud being Filipino that it won, as a zero waste initiative in the social gastronomy movement in Brazil. And these two initiatives, the Move Food and the art, will actually be featured later on in the launch of the UN Scaling Up Nutrition Movement for IWD. Next slide, please. So I don't want to, get you bored on what we're doing, but we're doing two major work in women. One is Grow Her. This is a microsite I co-founded with Grow Asia, Corteva Agri-Science, and WOMAG, Women in Agribusiness. This microsite is actually showcasing the work of women all over the world. It's about inspiring, including and informing women all over the world that agriculture is not only about cultivating crops. Agriculture is also including all the women and tracing the women in the entire supply chain, and including, how the food will reach on your table. We're a strong believer that the women are the first to plant, the first to grow, but always the last to harvest and the last and the least to eat, because if a woman is actually harvesting and farming, it's always the household that is of a priority. Next slide, please. Another work that we're actually working in the Philippines is called Forward. making the women front and center of our work. This is about finding opportunities and roles of women in agriculture and rural development. So we develop programs and sustainable livelihood for women, movement like the More Love for Women Farmers. And right now we are working, to actually push for a policy Magna Carta of rural women, or especially Magna Carta of women in the agriculture sector. Next slide, please. Women organizations all over the Philippines, including the women in the IP sector, the moral sector, to actually be part of this work. Next slide, please. So I want to give you a little bit of context. I think I'm running out of time. I have 5 minutes left. But just to give you a context, in Philippine agriculture, 23% of them is women, 77% is men. However, though, even if the women is considered a little contribution in statistics, if you go and in study the entire supply chain, women is contributing reverse. Because during the pandemic, almost all the women in the farming communities are the ones mobilizing. And we're also trying to change the way on how women and men farmers have equal salary. Because right now in the Philippines, male farmers, they have a 14 pesos more salary than women farmers, 43 pesos. That 43 pesos is big because it can buy a kilo of rice in a day, right? Next slide, please. So we're trying to work with the Department of Agriculture in really creating a lot of women scientists in the farming communities. Look at these wonderful women. We're investing with them because investment for women is an investment to the whole community. So we're developing agricultural women scientists on our farms. Next slide, please. We're also working a lot with the Department of Agriculture. We launched the hashtag Plantdemic during the pandemic. We actually delivered urban kits, grow kits to almost 1,000 women in urban communities to plant and grow their own food. Next slide, please. And aside from that, we are known on climate resilient farming system that is gender inclusive and sensitive approach in agriculture, in sustainable agriculture. I think I will going to end my slide here, but more importantly, why I'm telling you this. Because Philippines, we have around 20 to 21 typhoons in a year. If we will not focus on climate resilient farming, that is not gender inclusive, it's so hard for us to solve our problem in the Philippines. Like, for example, in this picture, forget about me there, but it's really about these coconut farmers where we're giving a lot of intervention. In Marinduque Island, we have around 62 hectares of coconut farms with intercrop of ginger and turmeric, the superfoods. But around it, we work a lot with women to plant vegetables so that they have food on their table, and we also work with them to take care of other livestock and poultry so that they have different sources of income. Diversified sources of income will make our women more empowered. They have a voice to say, and more importantly, the most important one that we're trying to solve in the Magna Carta that I mentioned a while ago is to give the right to women to even own their land title. In the Philippines right now, it's still a huge fight that we're trying to pursue, that hopefully women can also get land title, not only their husbands. Because having that legal entity will give them more voice, will give them more leverage to do more. So hopefully my short presentation gave you a little bit of background on why this is so important to me, why this event is so important to me, why this platform is so important to me, and the work. Because from right now, my company is working with 30,000 smallholder farmers in the Philippines, and almost 50% of these farmers are actually women. So let's give them a voice. They are actually that unheard voice and the invisible workers that they are feeding all of us on a daily basis. Maraming salamat po. Happy International Women's Day again.
Maraming salamat po, Ms. Cherrie Atilano, founder and CEO of AGREA Agricultural Systems International. Truly so inspiring and really showing us that women can do anything. Kailangan lang go for it. Oh my gosh, naiiyak ako with inspiration from your story, truly. And I feel like we all need stories like this because lahat naman talaga ng buhay hindi nawawala ng challenges, but we have to push beyond them. And Miss Cherry's story truly proves that and shows that with how she's helping thousands of families across the country. Alam naman natin na across the world, we really do have enough resources, hindi lang nakakarating sa dapat. Thank you so much, Miss Cherrie Atilano, for what you do. And God bless you more in your work.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cherrie Atilano. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on to our second keynote speaker, continuing the inspiration on breaking grounds and rising to leadership challenges. Mayor Trina Fabic of Odiongan, Romblon implemented a strict lockdown, but made sure that she consulted Odiongan's residents and came up with programs to help them cope with a lockdown. Now, to ensure that the housebound residents had what they need and still have the means to earn, Mayor Fabic commissioned local seamstresses to sew face masks and personal protective equipment. She also bought vegetables, fish, and chicken from the local farmers and fishermen. The masks and food were later on also distributed to the residents. Mayor Trina enforced a curfew and set up checkpoints to restrict movement. She deployed shuttles to ferry healthcare workers and other frontliners as public transportation was banned. She has extensively used social media for daily updates and public consultation. In hindsight, Mayor Trina implemented programs that are inexpensive, simple, and yet responsive to the unique needs of the local communities. She went beyond her basic mandate. We honor her and we are truly grateful to have her with us today. Please give a warm welcome to another superwoman inspiring us all into the future, Mayor Trina Firmalo Fabic.
Thank you, Tony. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Maadong hapon. It's my pleasure and honor to be with you this afternoon in the company of such amazing women, such as my fellow speakers, and with all of you who are participating in this symposium. I thank Oxfam, to Ms. Lot, to Nomel, and Move PH, Rappler for the invitation. I wanted to share with you my experience as a woman in politics. As a relatively young woman, it has been a challenging leadership journey for me. I have had the weight of many expectations and double standards on my shoulders. I have had my personal life examined under a microscope. I have encountered people who have questioned my leadership capability purely on the basis of gender, as in, hindi kita bobotohin dahil babae ka at hindi marunong maging mabuting leader ang babae. I've had to deal with stereotyping and misogynism from male officials and co-workers. As a result, I have looked inward and outward over the years to form and process the kind of leadership I believe I can and must provide. Now, in a time of global crisis, as mayor of my town, my strength and my skills have been further put to the test. I tried to address both sides of the coin of the COVID-19 quandary, the health dimension and the economic dimension. I want to share with you just a few slides so that you can see what we've been doing. Okay. I hope it's visible for all. What I've learned is that a timely initial response in a pandemic will set the stage for future actions. As this was a new phenomenon, we immediately instituted and put in place stringent health protocols in consultation with frontliners and experts. We established a task force on new infectious diseases, set up checkpoints at ports in between barangays, and constantly updated constituents with what was going on. We provided support to medical and health personnel, placed importance on mental health, and undertook massive information dissemination campaigns for the public so that they would be aware, cooperative, and calm. We are proud to report that because of all these efforts, we have had only 3 COVID-19 cases, all imported, and have not yet had a case of local transmission in our town. We have also mobilized anti-bawsi desks at the barangay level. Simultaneously, to galvanize the local economy and to support those who were most affected by the pandemics, we provided relief packs sourced from local agricultural products. And we also launched a Mercado on the Go, or a rolling market, as you can see. So it benefited more than 9,000 households. And this allowed people, despite the movement restrictions, to still have access to food. This was later on adapted into Odiongan e-Palengke. This won 3rd place at the National DICT Awards. It's just a very simple Facebook Messenger app, but because of this, people don't have to go out of their homes. They can order from the wet market, and this is helping a lot of local producers as well. And Tony mentioned this earlier in the introduction. We're most proud of our Ayuda Mula sa Agrikultura. So our relief packs sourced from local agricultural products allowed us to help farmers and fisher folks and poultry producers who didn't know where they could sell their produce because of the movement restrictions. So we were able to dispose of 28 tons. We were able to purchase them from the farmers directly and give them to more than 14,000 families as relief goods. We also gave away vegetable seeds so that people could start planting their own vegetables. We added value to agricultural products by setting up a meat processing facility, and now we're in the process of putting up a fruit and vegetable processing facility, a cacao processing facility, and a food supplement processing facility. We gave away different products, again, to address the poultry problem, also to provide support to those who didn't receive any social amelioration program help. So we provided special care packages for persons with disabilities, children with disabilities, senior citizens, malnourished children, solo parents, other vulnerable groups. We gave more than 50 live stream announcements on Facebook over a period of 3 months with simultaneous broadcast on local radio station and television channel. So this allowed us to assure people that the LG was doing everything possible and that they should remain calm. We had e-Receta for high-risk patients. So we did virtual consults. We had daily disinfection operations. We had a laboratory on wheels where almost 1,000 senior citizens were served. So since senior citizens were not allowed to go out of their houses, we went barangay by barangay to provide them for free laboratory services. We had a partnership with the Department of Psychiatry of UPPGH, as well as virtual consults with child neurologists to help those with mental and neurological problems. We had psychological counseling and stress management sessions for our frontliners in partnership with academic institutions. We had a free shuttle service for our frontliners and for health workers, especially during the first few months of the pandemic. So we served more than 6,000 passengers. During the time when there was a shortage, we employed local sewers to come up with face masks and local PPEs, which we're using up to today. We also had a library on the go, sponsored by our Sangguniang Kabataan. So we were able to go around and provide children with book rentals, which allowed them to spend their time during the quarantine very well. We also had contests for them, like Best Corner of the House, Best House Travel Vlog, TikTok Challenge, and all those things that kept them engaged and kept them at home. We had a COVID Fund loan assistance program in cooperation with 4 co-ops. So this was for small businesses, for micro and small enterprises, so that they could get back on their feet. So this was a program with very, very low interests. So these are among the programs that we had. And this was our way of helping our constituents. So just to go back to my speech. So these were some of the things that we thought we could do to help our constituents during this time. And our experience showed us that timely, accurate, and relevant information are crucial and critical components of crisis management. Information capacitates frontliners and pacifies and assures constituents. It also prevents the spread of unverified information, which causes people to panic. In this regard, the accessibility of the local government must be enhanced through all possible mediums and platforms. Text and call hotlines, social media. We had an online help desk, email, radio, community TV, printed IEC materials, and of course, the bandillo. Communication should not just be one way, from government to citizenry. Instead, government must have its finger on the pulse of the people to listen to their concerns and questions and provide appropriate responses. During this time, people look to their leaders for assurance and guidance. We must be ready to fulfill that role. This is also not the time for politicking. Non-partisan, equal treatment of citizens is a must. Related to this, consistency in policy and implementation is key. Our credibility is only as good as our consistency. We focused our attention and resources on training and capacitating employees and frontliners so that they have adequate support to fulfill their roles. To further enhance our reach, we engaged the community and the private sector. Many individuals and private groups, as well as establishments, wanted to help. We provided and facilitated opportunities for them to do so. They helped us raise funds for PPEs and medical supplies, coordinated meals for frontliners and personnel at checkpoints, and provided meals and supplies for isolated individuals. Cultivating trust and showing transparency are very important to harness the power of private philanthropy and social capital and cultivate a culture of volunteerism. It was also necessary for us to coordinate with neighboring municipalities to ensure that our policies did not conflict with one another. Interlocal cooperation is vital in a pandemic to stem infection and transmission. Limited resources should not restrict us from coming up with creative solutions. There are many ways to approach and solve a problem. In particular, utilize technology such as ICT, fintech or financial technology, telemedicine, and other relatively inexpensive tools to adapt to the situation, coming up with e-services and online modes of processing and payment, and so on and so forth. Networking also allowed us to tap knowledge and resources from other organizations and agencies. So Cherrie, to the previous speaker who spoke before me, I will surely be networking with you to work with you on many things. Agriculture and local food production, as well as programs to support MSMEs, workers, and people who lost their jobs must also be a key part of any long-term rehabilitation and recovery plan, especially in these COVID times. We're establishing, as you saw earlier, processing facilities for agricultural products to add value. Our approach to health should also be holistic, looking not only at the physical manifestations of COVID, but also looking at how we can strengthen mental health programs during these challenging times. We must also modify our comprehensive land use plans and land use policies to reflect a mixed-use development strategy that will fit within the frame of movement restrictions. Challenges can be transformed into opportunities if approached with the right mindset. Consultation with and participation of constituents are indispensable components of a responsive and relevant strategy. Being a woman has been an advantage as we try to approach problems with a balanced, compassionate, and inclusive perspective. Because of our life experiences, we're capable of making difficult and critical decisions which impact the community and address their needs. The pandemic has been a platform to show the community that women are strong, decisive, and nurturing leaders. During this period of crisis and unpredictability, women leaders have stepped up to the task at hand and have been consultative, decisive, and supportive of their communities. Despite the grim circumstances, women leaders have become shining beacons of good governance across the country. However, at the end of the day, everyone must be on board. We need men to be champions of women's rights. Our people have been kept safe and protected through the collaborative effort of both men and women, leaders of my team. We must all come together for what we want to achieve for our communities. We all have the common dream of providing opportunities for our people to achieve their highest potential and to have good quality lives for themselves and their families. We should not just adapt to the new normal, but instead build a better normal together. What can we do further to break ground and to rise up? We must advocate for good governance. Pushing for good governance is pushing for women's rights because good governance will lead to more relevant, more inclusive programs that will benefit women. We must also provide opportunities for women to be engaged in political and civic life. We stand on the shoulders of the women who have come before us and who fearlessly fought for what they believe to be right and for what they believe to be rightfully theirs. Filipino women only obtained the right to vote and to run for office in 1937, one of the earliest to do so in the Asia-Pacific region. We've come so far since then. We too should work hard so that those who will come after us will have an easier, better time. Women must realize that self-actualization is their birthright. It is every human being's birthright. Finally, we must build a community of support. Let us be kind to one another. Don't make chismis about your fellow women. Build and push up instead of tearing down. We can only approximate what each one of us is going through each day. The best we can do is to be kind. Offer professional or technical advice to women who need it. Be mindful and intentional in the kind of leaders, businesses, programs, charities that you support. Normalize and advocate women in leadership. The pandemic has shown us that we need more compassion and we need more purpose in our leadership, both from men and women. It has shown us what is truly essential and that life is precious and fragile. I pray that each one of us will do what we can to make this a more equal, more equitable world for all of us. Happy International Women's Day to all. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po, Mayor Fabic. We are so honored to have you with us today, demonstrating that sustainable cities and communities truly are possible. Of course, such wise words from a brave, ruthless, brilliant, but most importantly, kind and compassionate woman that is truly rooted in purpose. Nakita natin ngayong pandemic talaga the importance of being able to be self-sufficient and sustainable, especially with communities that are detached from everything else. And of course, we've seen that with Mayor Trina's work, so much is possible. Inclusivity and sustaining our communities locally can be done. We wish you more power, Mayor. And of course, it's so exciting to hear that just from today's event, you might be already nurturing, or you will be nurturing, a new partnership with Agria as well. And with that, we'd also like to ask our panelists to please continue sending in your questions, actually, if you haven't yet. We have so many brilliant women with us today that would be happy to answer your questions and help inspire you into action. Don't forget to include your name, your question, and who you would like the question to be directed to. We'll be coming up with a panel discussion in just a bit. And we have already heard from 2 women in leadership. And aren't we feeling so good? Let's see those hearts. Let's see those hands in the air. And of course, I know that you are all inspired to move forward, of course, as powerful women. And of course, while we relish on these amazing stories, let's pause for a wonderful performance from composer, singer, activist, also known as Teenage Granny. Please give a warm welcome to Alyana Cabral.
So much. Good afternoon to all the powerful women in the room. I'm Alyana. I'm an artist. Right now, I work with an artist alliance for genuine land reform and rural development. I'm also part of a feminist collective called Kababae Mong Tao. We organize exhibitions and events. So I'm just really happy and humbled to be here in the presence of very amazing women. Thank you so much, Oxfam and Rappler, for organizing this event. That was a really inspiring speech as well by Miss Cherrie of Agria, because I'm reminded of the farmer communities that we sometimes engage with. And in those communities, women are really the ones who are at the forefront of defending their land, and defending their families. And they are also the ones who primarily take care of community gardens, of their plots, of their crops. So I'm inspired by that. And this song that I'm going to play is called I Ain't No Domestic Slave. It's just a shout out to all the women, to the powerful women who defend our land and our communities, and to show that women are not confined to their homes. They're the ones who are making our food and defending our families. So, there is no excuse for all your so much.
Thank you so much, Miss Alyana Cabral. Maraming salamat for that very heartfelt and passionate performance. We look forward to hearing from you again soon. And for what you are doing, truly, Alyana, you are to be commended. Music and art is something that I very much relate to, just like you. And truly, it is a very powerful way to speak about issues that should be talked about, that need to be vocalized, and that need to be heard. So thank you so much for using your art and your music so bravely and so brilliantly. We honor you, Alyana. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue on with more inspiration and more women empowerment. Our third keynote speaker for today will be talking about breaking glass ceilings and empowering resiliency. Dr. Joann Diray Arce obtained her PhD in microbiology and molecular biology at Brigham Young University. Currently, she is an instructor in pediatrics at Harvard Medical School and a research associate at the Division of Infectious Diseases at Boston Children's Hospital. She is the scientific lead of the Data Management Core DMC for the Expanded Program on Immunization Consortium, a program funded by NIAID, National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, or NIAID, to comprehensively study the human immune system and characterize vaccine-induced molecular signatures. Now, when the pandemic started, her team emerged to become the U.S. National Clinical and Data Coordinating Center for the NIAID study called IMPACT, or IMPACC, which stands for Immunophenotyping Assessment in a COVID-19 cohort. As the immunoassay and computing lead, her team is currently assessing the severity of the disease and identifying the signatures of the patients hospitalized with COVID-19, together with expert scientists and physicians across 15 biomedical centers in the US. This effort, as well as her involvement with multiple COVID-19 vaccine candidates, is one of the many ongoing projects to better understand how this novel disease affects people differently and determine optimal ways to treat COVID-19 and help escalate the discovery of vaccines and targeted therapeutics. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Joann Diray Arce.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Tony, and also for the invitation from Oxfam PH and Move.ph for this year's International Women's Day. And I'm so honored to be here. I apologize. I'm going to try to be as energetic as I can, but it's almost 2 a.m. here. But I'm so happy to be able to be a part of this particular event. We always thought that 2020, the year 2020 will be like the eyesight, signifying brighter vision. Nonetheless, the year has emerged to be a certainly unique vision to be written in history that not one of us has ever imagined from the years prior. It's a vision to exercise our power amidst challenges and has truly tested our resilience as humanity because of this pandemic. My name is Dr. Joann Diray Arce. I am assistant vaccinologist and infectious disease researcher studying COVID-19 and vaccines. I am a wife and a mom of 3. Let me tell you my story. February 25th in 2020, so it has been a year ago, I packed my bags for a typical 3-day event to Bethesda, Maryland, to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, or NIAID. You probably have seen Tony Fauci always on the scene or even in television. He basically heads that particular department. What an ironic trip that was my last out-of-state travel. For years prior, I have been traveling at least twice a year to the DC area because of my team's ongoing involvement with an immunology consortium that I belong to. This consortium awards groups of scientists from the top 1% academic and immunology centers across the US to study the effects of vaccines within the human population. These multiple centers joined together to study the vaccines that we are very aware of, such as influenza, HIV vaccine trials, dengue, shingles, TB, malaria, just to name a few. It was a different year for me with so much pressure. I am there to represent our whole group from the Harvard Medical School to give a platform presentation in front of expert scientists and senior NIAID officials about our ongoing project and the maternal transfer of antibodies in newborns after vaccination. At that event, just like what I mentioned, it was February 25, 2020. There were some of our colleagues who've gathered data about this new coronavirus strain that we've been hearing in the news from their Asian collaborators. Still, it wasn't as terrifying as we thought. We thought it was just another virus that we've all been studying about. I mean, like, as you can see in this whole room, we're mostly immunologists, physicians, scientists, even virologists. I went home back to Boston, and exactly 2 weeks later, on March 11, 2020, the WHO announced that this SARS-CoV-2 infection, known as COVID-19, emerged to be a global pandemic. That was when the pandemic reality sunk in. March 8, 2020, yes, exactly a year ago from today. Do you all know how many cases were reported in the US with SARS-CoV-2 infection? 147 cases. A month after that, on April 8, 2020, there were 31,584. As of today, we had 29 million cases in the US and 525,000 deaths. Spreading like a wildfire with no knowns and treatments during that time, masks and PPE are in shortage. These were the daily concerns of frontline workers and even scientists like us going to battle without any armor. 2 weeks after presenting in NIAID about an entirely different scope of viral vaccine work, we were then called to an emergency meeting in NIAID. We were selected to be the National Data and Clinical Coordinating Center to have a surveillance of COVID-19. Since then, even up to this time, my morning call had been meeting with these NIAID officials. If you can think about it, they are the number 3 or number 4 from Tony Fauci's team every day to set up this particular study. We have a huge task to implement this new study right away, set up a pipeline to gather data, enroll thousands of COVID-19 patients across the country, and learn more about this disease. I have been tasked to lead and coordinate the immunoassay and computing arm of this coordinating center. The goal of the study is to characterize patients who are mostly to die from the disease, study the long haulers, as you probably have seen in the news right now, that some of them still have the symptoms of COVID-19 even after recovery, and to inform treatment course and vaccines against COVID-19. Night and day, working for the studies, no weekends, a typical 8 to 9 month preparation for this kind of study was set up from ground for only 6 weeks. With this responsibility and few other major projects working on SARS-CoV-2 vaccine candidates, I have definitely reached out multiple burnout incidences. This was also when the state borders started closing, school instituted Zoom meetings, stay-at-home order implemented, and a lot more. In addition, there were numerous political unrest happening right and left. I thought to myself during that time, now I know how the scientists feel on those zombie movies, because basically we were all scrambling from scratch. As you probably have heard, you've heard from what I mentioned a while ago, science is my passion, but being a mother is my life calling and my most sacred responsibility. I have been blessed with kids ages 8 years old, 5, and 1. Sometimes I forget that I actually have a toddler with me. Being a mother during the pandemic makes me feel like a very protective hen, gathering her cheeks under her wings. But now, the enemy is an unseen one. Even your regular microscope won't be able to detect it. Like anyone else, you tend to ask, what now? Where are we heading? Will there be an end to this? With the promise of vaccines and treatments, we are not in the woods yet. However, we know more than before. We can look back, take the lessons from the past year, and move forward with a new normal. Well, I am not going to talk much more about immunology and vaccines today. Let's save it for another meeting. There are some lessons I gathered as a young woman, a mommy scientist in this pandemic age. Number 1, build that strong fortress and establish lines of communication with your support system, especially with your spouse and children. When COVID-19 hit, some histories pointed out that in London's Great Plague in 1665, Sir Isaac Newton mentioned that he was the most productive when they were forced to stay home. This commentary was almost immediately received an observation to any women scientist, saying out loud, well, Isaac Newton didn't have caregiving responsibilities. The challenges of working as a scientist from home with children are, of course, a tremendous privilege in a world where the pandemic continues to exacerbate long-standing societal inequities and where many have already lost jobs, healthcare, or even loved ones. A recent survey from Understanding American Study reported that of 5,900 adults, 33% of employed mothers responded that they have been primarily responsible for providing childcare during COVID-19 school closure, compared to only 7% of employed fathers. Institutions should ensure that the careers of their staff can survive now and thrive after the pandemic. Women, especially us, we cannot all be at maximum capacity all the time, or we will risk our physical and mental health in the process. Learn how to speak with your family to divide and conquer chores. I have been very fortunate to have a supportive husband as he helped me equally with the task at home, as he also juggles his school and business while I do science. We have talked early on about this defined responsibilities. I mentioned to him that I rather deal with anything food related. Cooking and grocery shopping, which I mostly do online, are very therapeutic for me. Come on, who doesn't want to click at the add to cart button, right? While I do the cooking, my husband deals with the cleaning. He's good at it anyway, so who am I to stop him? I'm just so fortunate to have someone who sees cleaning as therapeutic also. He even tasked his assistant. We do have an assistant, and we named him JJ to help him clean up. For mothers out there, you probably know the well-loved character in Cocomelon, JJ. We named it after him. He is actually our dedicated Roomba, named by my toddler. As you know, here in the States, we don't have any household help. We also have taught my 8-year-old son and my 5-year-old daughter to segregate the laundry and start the washer. They can play with their toys, but they have to clean up after. It is never too early to teach them responsibilities at home, and it has certainly been a great help, especially during these hard times. Number 2, be forgiving to yourself and also be sensitive to your needs and also to the people around you. Set your boundaries and respect others as well. As a scientist working directly on SARS-CoV-2, I can only affirm that this virus doesn't choose its victim. Boundaries are set to contain the virus to prevent transmission. But that doesn't only mean quarantining. It also, because since we are all staying at home, you should also respect other boundaries, especially when during off work. Some have found to decrease anxiety around COVID by not logging into social media. I, in particular, don't see checking my Facebook post as therapeutic and felt that I'm more working whenever I do so. As I see this and that news about COVID or vaccine, someone posted some like crazy news that is not even factual about this vaccines or about COVID-19. One thing I know, I'm back to reading papers and contacting my colleagues about the results and follow-up work. Remember, be human and act like one. Normalize that it is okay not to be okay. We're all showing our struggles differently. There are moments when you don't want to do the chores. As for myself, cook dinner or do the dishes, especially after long days of work, and it is okay. Tell your spouse or family openly and sincerely when you feel this way. During the pandemic, I prepped my husband that there will be those nights, usually just once a week, that we might need to order pizza or instead of cooking. I'm also in contact with those around the community here in Massachusetts, cooking lutong bahay in the area and ordered excellent Filipino food just to reheat if needed. An authentic bulalo from amazing nanays in the community will warm your soul in stressful nights, and I can attest to that. Make things simple and don't sweat with simple stuff. I tend to schedule my me time in which my husband knows. I have to give him his time to do so also. Do not run faster than you have strength. Remember, you are replaceable at work, but you are not replaceable at home. And home is your real life, and always keep that perspective. Number 3, a goal without a timeline is just a dream. Stick to your set timeline. Believe you can and you will. Seek the support system that can help you with these goals. A quote from a religious woman leader, Joy Jones, mentioned that women wear many hats. We tend to do so. We are very good in multitasking, but it is impossible and sometimes unnecessary to wear them all at once. Determine what you can focus today. During this pandemic, I came to a realization that I don't have all the time in my hands. I cannot be a certified plantita, for example, a professional baker, just like what you see in all your Facebook posts, or I cannot binge watch K-drama, even though I really want to. I have plenty of papers and grants to write. I need to potty train my toddler, but also my laundry pile is also growing, waiting to be folded. However, I know that I can try to put our house in order little by folding our clothes, for example, one weekend and cleaning the pantry at next. It has been a family event that we have to set aside. Also, learn that nobody has imposed a timeline. We are not in competition with anyone. We need to thrive and survive, especially during these hard times. You are the only one responsible for your own family, and stick with your timeline that works. This doesn't apply only to our never-ending household chores, but also to your dreams as a woman. Never let anyone tell you that your options are limited. There is this term, imposter syndrome, that creeps up to me all the time as a young woman scientist of color, a Filipina, and a junior faculty at Harvard Medical School. Psychologists described it as a nagging feeling that you're not good enough, that you don't belong, that you don't deserve that job, that promotion, that grant, the deal, the seat at the table. I have particularly observed that women professors who make it, meaning those who have tenure at Harvard, have this attitude of putting the stake on their expertise and own their work and accomplishment. Just like what I mentioned during my story, when I presented at that huge meeting last year, one of my women mentors, Dr. Beate Kampman, she's the director of Vaccine Center in London School of Tropical and Hygiene, and also leads numerous efforts in containing the virus in the UK at this time. She set me aside and talked to me and said, Joann, you know that you are the only person in the room and the entire auditorium who is the expert on the topic. Imagine as if all these people, especially these men around you, are just in their underpants. The former First Lady, Michelle Obama, also has written that as a young woman, she used to lie awake at night asking herself, am I too loud? Too much? Dreaming too big? Eventually, I got tired of always worrying what everyone else thought of me, she said. I decided not to listen. So everyone, this is what I can say. Teach your children, especially your daughters, that they too can be whoever they want to be. They can be an astronaut, a scientist, a writer, or even a president of a country. When you educate a girl, you educate a whole nation. Believe that you can and you will. Women sees things differently than men do. Our perspectives are greatly needed. Happy International Women's Day, and make that history be your story. Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Joann Diray Arce, for really inspiring us and making us proud, not just to be women, but to be Filipino women. Grabe. Really going beyond boundaries, showing us and proving that women can do it all. And as mentioned earlier, sabi nga na, iniisip natin minsan sa mundo, sinasabi na being a woman can be disadvantages, but no. Today, we're proving that being a woman is strength. As we see, women are always given so many responsibilities from the moment we are born. And because of that, we are able to challenge ourselves at an early age and, of course, break boundaries. But with that, ang masasabi lang natin dyan sa Oxfam is care work is teamwork. Isa yan sa pinakamahalagang natutunan ko sa Oxfam. And Dr. Joann, thank you so much for sharing your story with your family, how your partnership with your husband really contributes to the success, not just of your work, but of your wonderful family life and your children. Maraming salamat po ulit for inspiring us all. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if Doc Joann represented Filipinas overseas, our fourth, but certainly not the least speaker, represents women in leadership beyond our borders. Her Excellency Anke Reifenstuel is the ambassador at the German Embassy in Manila since August 2019. Before that, she was the head of the Division of Humanitarian Assistance and Humanitarian Demining Operations at the Federal Foreign Office in Berlin, which is part of the Directorate General for Humanitarian Assistance, Crisis Prevention, Stabilization, and Post-Conflict Reconstruction. She has dealt with humanitarian assistance since 2012, when she became deputy head of this division, 2012 to 2016. Her Excellency Anke Reifenstuel has worked in the diplomatic service since 1993. Her postings included the German embassies in London, New Delhi, Cairo, and Manila. During her first year as German ambassador in the Philippines, she had the chance to get to know different places, where she met with representatives and officials to not only strengthen the bilateral relationship between both countries, but also to get to know better its people and their culture. Her journey led her to Mindanao, Ilocos, South and North, Cebu, Palau, Cavite, and hopefully there will be more to come in the next couple of years in the Philippines and in our region. We are truly honored to have with us today Her Excellency Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel of the German Embassy in Manila.
Thank you very much for this great introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Oxfam and Rappler, for inviting me to this virtual event to talk about Germany's response to the pandemic and the role of women leaders in it. Numerous studies and analyses have been done since the start of the pandemic on how different countries have dealt and are dealing with the challenge. Many of these studies show that countries with women in leadership roles have been very successful in containing the spread of the virus. Usually, Germany, under the very capable leadership of Chancellor Angela Merkel, is mentioned in this regard. And we have indeed seen that Chancellor Merkel has taken a convincing and strong leadership role in this challenging situation. When the pandemic struck in Europe in March last year, the German government, that, by the way, consists of a cabinet of 15 ministers, of which 6 are women, and Chancellor Merkel took a swift and decisive action, including a lockdown of a few weeks in March and April. From the very outset, the German government decided for an inclusive approach. Chancellor Merkel underlined from the very start that only if the population is informed and their concerns, like the necessary flexible work formats, the question whether schools and nurseries should be closed or kept open, etc., are being addressed and taken into account, then only the measures to contain the spread of the virus can succeed. At the same time, it was Chancellor Merkel who from early on made the point that national isolationism is not an option for Europe, and that it needs coordination and mutual international solidarity in order to succeed and to live up to the European and democratic values we identified ourselves with. Germany's contribution to the COVAX initiative is probably one of the most important examples of our commitment to international solidarity. And I was very proud to be part of the ceremony to welcome the arrival of the first batch of the COVAX vaccines here in Manila last week. No one is safe until everyone is safe has become the guiding principle for our action. With discipline and understanding among the population in Germany, the curve could be flattened rather quickly, and from early May onwards, the daily number of cases was stable at around 400, 500. However, the situation has changed now. With the start of the annual flu season in the autumn, in November last year, with outside temperatures dropping below zero and the occurrence of the UK and the South African variants of the virus, Germany is currently facing a second wave. New lockdowns and tighter regulations have been imposed, but the approach we have taken in Germany from the very beginning, an inclusive approach, this has not been changed since it has proven to be successful and has been supported by the population. The pandemic is a global health crisis, yes, but it is much more than that. It affects all sectors of our societies, be it political, economic, or education, as well as our private lives. And the impact is heavily felt, especially in our private lives. With the pandemic, home office has become part of our everyday routines. The temporary closure of schools in Germany has imposed additional tasks, mainly on the shoulders of millions of women. We see this phenomenon everywhere around the world. Women are not only in charge of their job anymore and their household, but now they are also teachers for their kids at home in the homeschooling environment. International studies show that most of the additional burden that is related to the stay-home, work-from-home policy rests on the shoulders of women. In addition to these situations at home, women are at the forefront of fighting the pandemic. Most healthcare workers are women, and they have been doing an incredible job now for more than a year. Their tireless commitment in their job comes on top of their duties at home, and it is often overseen or not appreciated adequately. The imbalance of usually having at least 2 jobs for women, office and home or family, is not new, but the situation has been fueled further by the pandemic and has increasingly raised the attention on the necessity of fairness and gender equality. Therefore, the pandemic, despite all the challenges we are facing, also bears the chance of promoting and establishing an environment of better gender equality, fairness, equal participation and involvement of women, not only in leadership positions, but throughout all sectors and levels of our societies. I would like to give a few examples for initiatives that have been taken in Germany in order to promote gender equality. Since the pandemic started, the debate about opening or closing schools has been a priority. The government has always underlined that schools as a center for teaching, but also critical for social education and development of children, should be the last institutions to be closed and the first ones to open after a lockdown. We have also introduced a large flexibility when the pandemic struck in order to ensure home office instead from working from the office, and this will be continued even after the pandemic. But already way before the pandemic, in 2015, a mandatory women quota in executive boards in the private sector has been introduced and is progressively being implemented. As I already said, in our government, we have, of course, a female Chancellor Merkel, but the cabinet ministers, the cabinet posts, 6 out of 15 are being held by women, including very challenging ones and important ones like the Minister for Defense or the Minister for Justice. They are women. In our parliament, more than 30% of the parliamentarians are women. Political parties in Germany usually have a 2-person chairmanship with most of the times 1 woman, 1 man being the chair of that party. At our foreign ministry, but also at other government institutions, we have the policy and are required to have at least 30 women panelists when we are organizing conferences and similar events, not only on International Women's Day, but in general. Our minister said he will not attend a meeting or a conference, a panel, if not at least 30% of the panelists are women. March 8th, today, International Women's Day, is a public holiday in Germany. This is also has also hugely contributed to the awareness raising of the necessary equality and equal rights for women. We support the recommendation of international expert studies that came to the conclusion that societies where equal rights for women are provided and societies in which women have an equal share in decision-making and leadership, that such societies provide an adequate environment that promotes stability, security, and peace. Therefore, the Women, Peace and Security agenda of the United Nations has become a priority of German politics, including initiatives for women leader networks in Africa and in South America, and promoting the role of women in peace building. These are just a few examples that underline Germany's commitment of promoting the role of women and giving them an equal share in all sectors of a society. Much has been achieved, but at the same time, we are aware that a lot still needs to be done. Thank you very much and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel of the German Embassy in Manila. We are truly grateful for the passion that you have shown for our country, and we look to your expertise and leadership as we build back better from this pandemic. Thank you for placing the plight of women at the forefront of all that you do, and for sharing the valuable role of women in peace building as well. We honor you, and we are truly grateful to have you with us today. And of course, listening to 4 amazing women in leadership has given not just me, I'm sure, but all of you immense hope that the new normal brought by the pandemic can be a better normal, not only for Filipinos in general, but more specifically for women and girls. Now, before we start our panel discussion, we are going to have another wonderful musical break as I call back our wonderful performer for today, artist and composer, Alyana.
Thank you so much again for the very inspiring speeches by our panelists, by our speakers. I feel I've definitely learned so much from this session, and I feel more inspired now, even if I don't really work in the science or politics field. But as an artist, I feel like I can draw strength from our women leaders who are really contributing greatly to world building in each of our societies. So I think as a cultural worker, it's also important, and as a woman as well, to um, see the values that we can spread, and like that we can spread to the next generation, especially to the next generation of women who will be leaders in the future as well. So this next song of mine is about those values that we can uphold. This one is called Kundi Woman.
Come on.
much.
Thank you so much. Singer, composer, performer, activist, artist, Miss Alyana Cabral. Thank you so much for sharing with us the gift of your music, which is truly one of the most powerful things that can change the world. Thank you, Alyana. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our panel discussion. We hope you have your questions ready. We already have a few ready to go, and I'm sure you are so excited to hear again from our distinguished guests, panelists, and speakers today. We would like to call back the Honorable Mayor Trina Fabic of Odiongan, Romblon. Dr. Joann Diray Arce, of course, from the US, all the way from the United States. Thank you so much. She is the lead of the Data Management Core for the expanded program on immunization consortium funded by NIAID. And of course, once again, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel, Her Excellency. Now for our questions. Let's begin with something that was actually sent in earlier for Mayor. So since Mayor spoke much earlier, we're happy to give her the question first. Mayor, there are so many people here that are, I would say, they're like your fans now. All the amazing work that you're doing. And the question is, how did you navigate the apparent double standard imposed to you as a woman leader? Naku, excited din ako sa question na to. And of course, this question goes for before and of course, during the height of the pandemic po. Maraming salamat, Mayor.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you for the person who asked that question. So really, it's been such a challenge, especially, you know, growing up, you're not so aware of it. You're not so self-aware. So I think at the onset, I really was pressured. There was a lot of pressure. I tried my best to conform, you know, but somehow along the way, I felt like I wasn't being who I really was. I wasn't being authentic to myself. So what I did was that I really tried to slowly shift it, you know, because I think people do appreciate it when you're being your authentic self. So especially as a leader. So I tried to show them who I really was, you know, and not be so afraid to do that. And I think over the years, it has worked, that people have appreciated that and recognized that. So really, one part is not to be afraid of showing who you really are, but also trying to show people that there are indeed double standards, you know, that, hey, how come it's like this, you know? So it's a fine line that you have to walk. But at the end of the day, when you show people that you are competent, that you're able to get results done, I think then people can see that, you know, they look beyond the double standards. They look beyond the gender stereotypes and then just really look at what kind of leadership and support you can give them. So just keep going on.
Thank you so much for that wonderful response, Mayor Trina. We'll be back for more questions for you, more inspiring questions that people would like to hear your answer to. Moving on, in connection with that, we know that Dr. Joann is also doing a lot of work right now at the height of the pandemic, not just a lot of work, so much valuable work for the entire world. But Dr. Joann, a simple question I would really say from a woman's point of view, how did you juggle being a mother and being a scientist? Do you feel pressured to always be present at work, especially when people have their own perceptions of being a girl boss? And that is a question for you, Dr. Joann.
It is definitely tough, especially when you're in a lot of meetings. And then also I've been juggling sometimes, you know, because my kids are also at Zoom at home with me. So I think we really have to, you know, prepare first, schedule a time so that, you know, take care, you know, as you have to talk with your husband on responsibilities that you both can equally share. I think that's one of the most important thing that you can do. Yeah, basically being able to just have open lines of communication within your own family.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jo. And I think that clearly shows that you have a very supportive husband and partner who is really willing to work on these schedules for you and who believes that women should definitely be given an equal role in the world. So thank you so much, Dr. Joann. Moving on to Her Excellency, Ambassador Anke. we would actually like to ask you a similar question about women empowerment. Given that you've traveled across the world, you've worked on so many world-changing projects. Your Excellency, we'd like to know that how do you feel about the apparent double standard of that is imposed on women, not just before, but even more so now during the pandemic with all the issues being exacerbated? And how do you think women empowerment in the Philippines stands as of today?
Thank you very much for this question. And also already in your introduction, I really felt reminded very much to my previous posting when I was in Berlin dealing with humanitarian assistance, where I could also travel a lot to many countries in crisis, in humanitarian crisis, and where I could really see the role women have in peace building and the voice they don't have in all these crises and these challenging environments. So this being exposed to these situations in my various postings to the Arab world, but also in India, really grew much more the commitment we have to take in our work, in our everyday work, to promote, to empower women. And I think just feeling and seeing and experience the situation in other countries just makes growing the own commitment we do have as Germany. And I think I myself, I feel in a very privileged role to have the opportunity to see all these situations around the world, and at the same time having the opportunity to really make a change by the projects we support, by the projects we fund, by the sessions I'm attending, in being in New York, or in international conferences to explain what we have achieved in Germany, and that we are aware that in other parts of the world this is many steps still need to be done. So it's really something very personal to see what can be done and what can be achieved and how many little steps it takes. And at the same time, I also must admit, I'm also a mother. I have 3 children. And what I see right now in the pandemic is I don't see them. They are already grown. They are 20 and 22 and 24. They are back in Germany, and they used to travel to see me here, to come to visit me. And now I haven't seen them for 1 year. We only can see each other and can visit each other and talk to each other in the virtual format. And this is really challenging. At the same time, I'm also married, I'm a wife, and my husband is also an ambassador posted in Korea. And we thought traveling between these 2 posts would be easy, but then the pandemic changed a lot. So this is very challenging in everyone's personal life to go virtual and to see these challenges. And I think this is what also contributes to a growing awareness that everybody is facing challenges, very different challenges according to each other, each one's very personal individual situation, but we are all facing challenges. But that we really have to work together to overcome this crisis, and that what women are doing in this regard is really amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal trials and challenges during the pandemic as well, Your Excellency. I feel that that in itself inspires and empowers a lot, just as you said and mentioned that we all are having a hard time. We are all struggling, but it is just happening in different ways. And of course, we definitely highlight that it is much, much worse for others out there. And for those of us that can do their part, especially for the brilliant women on our panel today that are doing so much incredible work during this pandemic, truly, we honor you all for your time, your inspiration, and for showing us that you yourselves are not just dealing with the job at hand, but you still do have your duties as wives and as mothers. And that is even more incredible and inspiring. With that, we'd actually like to go back to a question to Mayor Fabic, Mayor Trina. And I feel that this is something not just her, but you have all experienced. Actually, this question goes to all of our panelists today. We'll begin with Mayor Trina. And the question is, although we have progressed, were there moments when you felt like you were still being underestimated despite your contribution and expertise? What were your challenges in leading in such a male-dominated industry, and how did you overcome this? And once again, we'd like to direct this to all of our panelists, beginning with Mayor Trina Fabic.
I think it's very difficult to just think of one specific instance, because somehow you just kind of expect it, in a way. Especially, I'm coming from a rural area. It's a very small community, and so I think that there is a bit of a disparity still in how we are perceived as women leaders. So I think what you really just have to do is to keep showing them that there are things that you can do, that you are competent, and really it's just a matter of engaging them and communicating with them. So, and when you start involving the people who are underestimating you, like really directly, as I said, engaging with them, I think they start to change their minds about you. It's just that it takes time. It's a time-intensive process, and you really do have to invest the resources into it. But really, there is no other way. And I think, as I said in my speech, we just have to make it easier for the women that will come after us. And, I have had a couple of young girls come up to me and say, when I grow up, I also want to be mayor. And for me, that's very heartwarming because, then it becomes more normal. It becomes more possible for them. So it's really just about that. Maybe for us, we're doing more effort now, but I think that it will change. It is changing. I think this pandemic has really highlighted how women can play a good leadership role.
Maraming salamat, Mayor Trina. I just really have to say, even the way you answer questions, the way you speak, there's so much strength behind it. And I'm sure you really empower and give strength to so many women and girls in Odiongan, Romblon, and in the Philippines. So thank you so much for everything that you do, po, Mayor.
Thank you.
And to follow up with that, we'd like to connect that again to Dr. Joann. Dr. Joann Diray Arce. Of course, Dr. Joann, how was your experience breaking into such a male-dominated industry in a new country where you are considered to be a double minority? You are a woman and a Filipina in the U.S. So what are your takeaways to help other aspiring Filipinos who want to be successful in their field overseas? And of course, to go beyond these challenges when you're underestimated.
Yeah, definitely. So what I can say is dare to be different. We can use that difference to actually make an impact to everyone else, right? And it will stick to them that you're doing something that is extraordinary. Not only that, is also to build your own confidence and to learn how to move forward and speak up. I think, as women, we tend to be very much timid, try to be confined in our own comfort zone. So we should try our best to own, just like what I mentioned on my speech, to own your own achievement, and also to do that similarly with other women. As we build together, we can see that, women are more empowered when we do so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joann. And of course, for Her Excellency, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel, we'd also like to ask again about the challenges that you have faced. And for you, it might have been challenges of different forms across the world. And linking that to today, what are the ways that we can make it easier for women to break into these male-dominated industries, considering the new barriers posed by the pandemic, as well as those times when women are given doubt about their challenges?
Thank you. And again, I can relate to this question very much from my own experience and life. being a diplomat, I very often, especially when my children were still small, was feeling torn between where should be my focus. I didn't have the choice to be able to work overtime. I had to be at home at a certain point of time to take care of the children, especially in Germany, where you don't have this luxury that we see here in the Philippines with the maids and the family living at the same place, taking care of the children. So for me, it was not possible to attend meetings late in the afternoon or to discuss hours and hours in such meetings. So, and this is something I have observed with many women I have worked with. Women are straight to the point. They are short. They are not discussing for hours. They are very much structured because they know they have something else to do after this important job. They have a family they have to take care of. So I have seen, since I started my career at the diplomatic service, a lot of improvement and a lot of steps we have taken in Germany. So for instance, now it is just not allowed and nobody is doing it to have a meeting after a certain point of time in the afternoon. Meetings you can only have up to until 3 p.m. and that's it, full stop. So this just takes account of the situation that people have a family and the family is a priority, and there must not be the choice between family or job. And this is something that should also be done in other countries. We have taken a lot of steps in this direction, but of course we are not perfect. And I forgot to mention one thing from the previous question, what I have seen here in the Philippines when it comes to the role of women. I am impressed. There is an amazing lot of strong and powerful women in the diplomatic service. I've seen the Philippines have an amazing ambassador in Germany, a female ambassador. And just 2 weeks ago, I had a chance to meet again with Vice President Eleni Robredo, and she is just very inspiring and powerful, and has grown during the pandemic to my perception. So there is, of course, also still a lot to do, but you have amazing, powerful women here in the Philippines as well.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We are truly grateful for your powerful presence in the Philippines, and we look forward to all the wonderful work that you will be doing here and in the years to come. We have one final question for all of our panelists before we end our panel discussion. And I guess this is more of looking for ways to give women a platform to get their voice heard. And the question is, what are the platforms that women leaders / scientists can use and should have to be able to expand the reach of their inspiring stories of leadership or their capacities given the current shrinking space of women's voices? So I guess they would like to know, what are the other platforms, whether it be in local communities, online, across the world, that you believe women can use for their voices to be heard, for them to move forward and take charge and show the world that women can do anything. We can begin with Mayor Trina.
You know, with all challenges comes great opportunities, right? And I think this pandemic has really taught us that things like this virtual Zoom podium is possible, right? Because before, we didn't really delve into these kinds of technologies much. And I think this is an opportunity for us that we can use a lot of platforms to make our voices be heard, to share our stories, and to help and support and empower each other. So I think that through activities like this Zoom podium, we're able to do that. We can use different platforms. Social media obviously is a very effective tool. But again, we should not overlook the traditional means as well. That's why we try to use all forms, all platforms as much as possible when we're doing our information dissemination for the pandemic. So really just reaching out to all the different levels, different platforms, because not everybody has access to internet and social media. But also maybe sharing stories, you know, not just facts, not just those kind of metrics, but also really the qualitative stuff, like the inspiring stories that are behind all the achievements. I think that touches the heart more, and whatever touches the heart, I think stays with a person longer. So I think that all of us have our own inspiring stories to share, and we're able to reinforce and help one another through that. So just having more activities like this, I think, is immensely helpful. And on my part, I've begun mentoring young women who, not just in politics, but young women who want to be active in the community. So I think that's a good start for me. And even I am reaping the rewards from that as well. Like, I'm also learning from them. So mentoring, I think, would be a wonderful platform for all of us. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Mayor Trina Fabic of Odiongan, Romblon. And of course, Dr. Joann Diray Arce from the USA.
So I think when you mention platforms, especially as a woman scientist, I usually, a lot of people has been asking me about questions that they do have about vaccines. I try my best to actually post it on my social media, but also to also open up the opportunities for others to read factual information about COVID-19, about the vaccines itself. There's a lot of miscommunication happening all around us, but we really have to do our own research and looking for the best way possible that we can communicate it. And as a scientist, it's very important, because if we're going to use very hard to understand words, it might not resonate. The public might not be able to take it all. So that's why if we try our best, or even sharing the information in our own language in different dialects, I think that really matters a lot. Not only that, is as a woman scientist, we also have to advocate for research that are targeting women. For example, one of my research in vaccines is that there are sex differences after vaccination. There are a lot of questions also about the maternal transfer, just like what I was mentioning. A year ago, I was mentioning about what are the effects on the baby and the mother. These are some things that we also have to open up our minds, that there should be research with this concept. And I know that the best way, best advocate for this are mothers, are women, because this is directly to us. And we have to advocate for that. And I am so grateful that we are given this kind of platform from Oxfam, from Rappler, Move.ph, and a lot more, to celebrate with all of us how important the women are in the community, whatever responsibilities they are having. And I'm just so thankful and grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joann Diray Arce, and of course, Her Excellency, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel.
Thank you. I think there are two ways I would like to advocate for. One is, of course, to give an example, to be an example, to explain yourself how exactly the way this panel is doing today, just to illustrate what is possible and how the way successful women have achieved what they did, to explain to others, to give an example. And then, of course, the other one is to start as early as possible with promoting and advocating for the role of women in society. It starts at the school already, and should start as soon as possible, as early as possible. In Germany, we have every year we have a so-called Girls' Day. I'm not sure whether you have this here in the Philippines as well. The Girls' Day has been introduced to break down, to get rid of old role models, and it invites girls on that day, schoolgirls, to companies and institutions that are usually male-dominated, to introduce them to this kind of work, to this job, and to open the doors and to welcome them as future colleagues, as future co-workers, whatever, in order to show that there might be role models, but these are old, and the world to girls is open to the whole world.
That's truly amazing, Your Excellency. That is so wonderful. And we truly do believe in starting them young. Even with the work that we do at our organization and everything that we do, we even say when it comes to waste management, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to responsibilities at home, we believe, of course, that it's always important to educate the young while they are still truly, truly early in life. We'd like to thank all of our panelists today. And before we end the panel discussion, I would just like to ask each and every one of you for one quick inspiring message that you would like to send out for International Women's Day. Once again, beginning po with Mayor Trina Fabic, if that's okay.
Sorry, I'm mobile. I just wanted to thank everybody and thank you for this opportunity. It's been so inspiring to hear from fellow women in different fields. I think it's amazing what we've been doing. And I think we've been holding up more than half our share of the world. So kudos to all of us. And whatever we're doing, everything we're doing, as long as we do it with love and with conviction and compassion, I think we're on the right track. So let's make the world a better and easier place for everybody, not just women, but for all people. So, and happy International Women's Day to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Trina Fabic of Odiongan, Romblon. Dr. Joann Diray Arce from the USA.
Thank you so much for that. I think for my last words, just a reminder to everyone, do not suffer in silence. Speak up. Just like what I said a while ago, put that stake on the table. You have a seat on the table. You have a unique responsibility to play, and you are very unique in your own way as a woman, and also build your own confidence, and to always build also others up. Not only that is to be able to educate your own family. Everything should start at home. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be able to share with amazing women and also the powerhouse, the role models of today's society. So thank you so much, everyone, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joann Diray Arce. And finally, some final words from Her Excellency Ambassador Anke Reifenstuel of the German Embassy in.
Thank you very much. I think there's not much more to say. The most important messages have already been made, have already been given. I think I can only reiterate what has been said. Speak up, believe in yourself, be an example yourself for what you can achieve.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you once again to our amazing, inspiring, and heroic speakers and panelists today. And truly, time seems to move faster when we are passionately learning from 4 inspirational women in leadership. And of course, that also includes Ms. Cherrie Atilano of AGREA Agricultural Systems earlier. And at this point, Oxfam Philippines would like to acknowledge more than 120 women's organizations that have been involved in bringing us an amazing campaign for International Women's Day. We may have not had the opportunity to meet in person, but what we have accomplished together is truly amazing. We would also like to thank UN Women and the Philippine Commission on Women as, of course, our key partners. We would like to thank Rappler, our media partner, and Move PH for helping us bring this Zoom-posium to everyone out there. And before we welcome a very important message from the highest ranking woman in leadership in the Philippines, allow me to also remind everyone that the results of our photo essay contest will be announced live on Zoom and Facebook on Friday, March 12th at 6 p.m. The response to the contest is unprecedented, with over 200 entries submitted from all over the country. Maraming salamat po. Also, if you happen to be at PITX, drop by our photo exhibit that will run until Saturday, March 13th before it travels to Abangan, Bicol, Eastern Visayas, and BARM. Watch out too for a video series on women in leadership and their stories of triumph over the pandemic. Lahat po yan, maaabangan ninyo sa Oxfam Pilipinas official page online and on social media. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a message from a woman in leadership who best exemplifies the struggles and victories of women in shaping an equal future. A message from the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines, the Honorable Maria Luisa Robredo.
Isang mainit na pagbati sa mga kasama natin sa Zoom post-tube na ito at Happy International Women's Day sa inyong lahat. This year's celebration comes at a time of great disruption because of COVID-19. Around the world, healthcare systems are buckling under tremendous strain. Economies are shrinking, and entire populations edge closer to poverty and hunger. During Oxfam's virtual march, I also mentioned how women are bearing the disproportionate brunt of the pandemic's impact. As leaders in your own organizations and communities, you know this. Here and in many countries, especially in the global south, gender and social inequalities have only widened because of COVID-19. Many women are being pushed out of the labor force as they comprise a large percentage of the hospitality, tourism, and retail industries, which are among the worst hit sectors in the economy. Many of those who used to survive on subsistence wages are forced to rely on government aid just to get by. Without a means of livelihood, of providing for their families through their own hard work, many women remain trapped and dependent on others, unable to dream bigger, much less have a positive impact on their own community. None of us expected to be tested this intensely during this pandemic. But as I always say, the challenge may be great, but the opportunity is always greater. The opportunity to help, to lead, to do more good. The work that women leaders like you have done over the past year is only further proof of that. Instead of being paralyzed by anxiety and uncertainty, you rolled up your sleeves and got to work. And there is no arguing with the results. The best performing countries in responding to the pandemic are in fact led by women. Here in the Philippines, many of our local women leaders found ways around the obstacles and quickly adapted to the crisis. They shifted meetings and operations online. They found ways to communicate and inform their communities. They used data to guide their interventions. We at the Office of the Vice President have also been fortunate to work with so many ordinary Filipinas who rose to the occasion, even outside formal leadership titles, and pitched in to help us do more and reach more in our COVID response operations. All these women proved that no gender has a monopoly of service and leadership. And more than that, they showed us precisely the kind of leadership we need today. One that is competent and compassionate, that empowers and empathizes, that listens and collaborates. Our vision is to build a world where women from all walks of life are given the chance to succeed, thrive, and lead as many of you did. For this to happen, we need you to keep doing what you do. But we also need to find more of us to rise to the moment, more of us to create spaces for other women, more of us to work harder and smarter to ensure that every woman can rise above her struggles. That when she holds significant positions in public service or in business, she does not have to apologize for the time she needs to be a mother to her children. That even though society often mistakenly equates femininity and empathy with being weak, she can embrace being a woman with pride and without fear. These extraordinary times ask so much of us. And while we have taken great strides towards empowering women, The road ahead remains long, and the work has only become more challenging because of the pandemic. Amidst the uncertainty and difficulty, what keeps me going is knowing that there are many of us who seek to join the chorus, to fight for our rights as women, as mothers, as leaders. There are many of us who are unafraid to show what competent leadership looks like. There are many of us who are brave enough to step up to the plate even in the face of the greatest crisis of our time. To all the women here today, remember that we are made for times like this. Any difficulty can be turned into an opportunity to lead with great resolve and great strength. True strength that empowers, rather than the illusory strength that oppresses and frightens others to silence. The kind of strength that nurtures, unites, and lifts all, so that they can be the best they can be. To all the advocates, allies, and women leaders in government and in the development sector who are with us today, I wish you all a happy and truly empowering International Women's Day. Maraming salamat at mabuhay kayong lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Vice President Leni Robredo. And of course, thank you for inspiring us and moving us into action for all that you do, not just for women and girls in the Philippines, but for the Filipino people as a whole. Maraming salamat po. And ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the close of today's symposium. However, let us remember that this should be the beginning. It is not the end. Today, we have witnessed what women have accomplished, yet we also know what we still have so much to do, and there is still so much to work on. And how can we make a difference? We are not really trying to ask for something big, but our little contributions, when added together, can be a ripple effect that can genuinely shape a better normal for women and girls everywhere. Let us go our separate ways today with our understanding that we must continue to come together on our common path and, of course, across our diverse ways to create bigger spaces for more women to rise in leadership. Now, of course, using the chat, don't be shy to share with us your commitment and how you can make a difference. Wherever you're watching from online, share that voice and be proud to be a woman. The IWD 2021 campaign is an opportunity to open the space and keep conversations on women's leadership towards achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. Of course, we commit to continuously engage our partners and the public in responding to the impact of the pandemic, including but not limited to food security, economic and asset recovery, shared care work, and social protection. That is the vow of Oxfam Pilipinas. Oxfam Pilipinas shall pursue to establishing new partnerships beyond the International Women's Day campaign to further the vision of establishing with you, our partners, a knowledgeable and learning hub on gender justice in the time of recovery and after COVID-19. Thank you so much for joining us today. We thank you all on behalf of Move PH, Rappler, and Oxfam Philippines. I'm Antoinette Taus, honored to have been your host. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy International Women's Day and mabuhay ang kababaihan.